Hello, dear listeners, and welcome to another evening of stories that settle in your heart like a favorite chair by the fire. Stories that remind us life is never truly finished, no matter how many pages we think we have left. Tonight, we are traveling to a small town in Maine, where a quiet library sits on a corner of Elm Street, its shelves heavy with books and secrets. Inside, a man named Walter Brooks, 67 years old, has spent his life among those shelves, but he is hiding from his own story. That is, until a young woman named Sophie and a collection of forgotten books pull him back to the world. This is the Library of Unfinished Books, a journey of lost pages, found voices, and dreams that refuse to stay silent. So, grab a warm drink, settle in, and let us turn the page together. Walter Brooks lives in a saltbox house at the edge of Camden, Maine, where the air smells of pine and salt water, and the streets wind narrow past clapboard homes. His place is small white paint peeling, shutters creaking, a porch with one wicker chair that sags under the weight of years. Inside, the rooms are dim, curtains drawn, the only sound the tick of a mantel clock and the creak of floorboards under his slow steps. He wakes each morning to the same routine: boiled coffee in a chipped mug, a slice of toast, and a walk to the library where he worked for 35 years until he retired 2 years ago. Now he volunteers 3 days a week, sorting returns, dusting shelves, his gray hair thinning, his shoulders stooped, his eyes carrying a sadness he does not name. The library is his refuge, a brick building with tall windows, ivy crawling up its walls. A wooden sign out front that reads Camden Public Library, Est. 1928. Inside, it smells of old paper and lemon polish, the kind of place where whispers feel sacred. Walter knows every corner, the oak tables scarred with initials, the children's nook with its faded rug, the stacks where novels lean like old friends. But he keeps a secret, tucked in a back room behind the history section, a cardboard box under a table, filled with books no one else notices. These are the unfinished books, novels, memoirs, mysteries, returned to the library with bookmarks stuck halfway, notes scribbled in margins, or pages dog-eared, as if the reader meant to come back but never did. Walter collects them, not sure why, maybe because they feel like him. Stopped in the middle, waiting. 5 years ago, Walter's wife, Clara, passed away cancer, quick and cruel, stealing her laugh, her warmth, her habit of reading aloud to him at night. They had no children, just each other, and a dream they shared, to write a book together, a love story about a lighthouse keeper and a painter, set on the rocky Maine coast. They started its scribbled chapters on yellow legal pads, giggled over coffee, but Clara got sick, and the pages stopped. Walter tried to keep going, but each word felt like losing her again, so he hid the manuscript in a drawer along with his heart. Now he lives quietly, speaks little, and lets the world pass by, except for those books in the box, each one a story someone else left behind. One crisp September morning, the library door jingles, and Sophie Carter walks in, 22 years old, a new volunteer. Her red hair tied in a messy bun, her sneakers squeaking on the hardwood. She is a college dropout, back in Camden after a year in Boston, unsure what she wants but certain it is not city life. Sophie is all energy, quick smiles, quicker questions, asking Walter about catalog systems, book repairs, why the coffee maker in the break room hisses like a cat. He answers and grunts, keeps his distance, but Sophie is persistent, trailing him through the stacks, chattering about her favorite novels, her dog named Muffin, her dream to do something that matters. A week later, Sophie stumbles on the box. Walter forgot to push it under the table after adding a battered copy of The Great Gatsby, a bookmark at page 87 with a note, "Had to stop. Life got heavy." Sophie pulls it out, flips through, her eyes wide. "Walter, what is this? Your secret stash?" she asks, grinning. He freezes, face reddening, mutters, "Just old returns, nothing special." But Sophie is already digging Jane Eyre with the grocery list tucked inside, Moby Dick with Keep Going, Dad scrawled on page 200, a romance novel stopped at chapter 3 with a post-it, "Too sad right now." "These are stories people didn't finish," she says, voice soft. "Why keep them? Why not help them finish?" Walter blinks, her words landing like a stone in still water. "Help them? They are gone, Sophie. Moved, died, who knows?" But she shakes her head, undeterred. "We could find them letters, emails, phone calls. Or at least read them ourselves, figure out why they stopped. These books deserve an ending, Walter, and maybe the people do too." He wants to argue, to retreat, but her eyes bright, stubborn, remind him of Clara, who once said, "Every story needs a last page, Walt." Against his better judgment, he nods, and so begins their project. The Library of Unfinished Books. A breeze off Camden's harbor carries the tang of saltwater and pine, whispering through the narrow streets where clapboard homes lean like old sailors. In a saltbox house at the town's edge, Walter Brooks wakes to the creak of shutters and the tick of a mantel clock, the only sounds in a home to quiet since Clara left. At 67, his gray hair thins, his cardigan frays, his hazel eyes hold a grief he does not speak. He boils coffee in a chipped mug, eats toast alone, and walks to the Camden Public Library, where he once worked, now volunteering to sort books and hide from the manuscript in his drawer a lighthouse love story, paused when Clara's laugh faded to cancer 5 years ago. The library is his harbor, its brick walls and ivy a shield, its shelves heavy with stories he knows better than his own. Inside, the air smells of old paper and wax, sunlight spilling through tall windows, catching dust like embers in a dying fire. Walter moves to the back room, his boots soft on the hardwood, and kneels by a cardboard box tucked under a table, its edges worn like a sailor's log. Inside are books, novels, journals, mysteries returned unfinished, their pages holding whispers of why. A bookmark at chapter 10, a note in the margin, a ticket stub folded tight. He collects them, not knowing why, only that they feel like him, stopped halfway, waiting for a hand to turn the page. This morning, he lingers, his fingers brushing a battered Jane Eyre, until a voice shatters the quiet, bright as a bell on the tide. "Walter, you're slower than Muffin chasing a crab." Sophie Carter bursts in, her sneakers squeaking, her red hair a wild flame under a knit cap. At 22, she is a storm, back in Camden after a year in Boston's blur, volunteering to find her place, her backpack thumping with notebooks and dreams. She kneels by the box, her hands quick, pulling a slim paperback, its green cover scarred, The Great Gatsby in faded gold. A note slips free, black ink on torn paper. Life got heavy. Sophie's breath catches, her eyes wide, like she has found a heart still beating. "Walter, this is someone's story," she says, voice soft, holding the note to the light. He steps closer, the words a hook in his chest, pulling at Clara's manuscript, untouched in its drawer. The checkout card names Ellen Harper, 58, Bayview Street, near the diner. Sophie's grin is a spark. "We have to find her. This book needs its ending." Walter's hands grip a shelf, his throat tight. "They are gone, Sophie." It is not our place, but her eyes, fierce like Clara's when she spoke of stories, hold him. "It is our place," she says, "to give them a last page." He nods, caught in her current, a tide he cannot fight. They walk to Bayview Street, the breeze sharp, leaves swirling red and gold, the harbors hum a low song in the distance. Sophie's scarf dances, her chatter about the diner's pie weaving through the quiet. Walter clutches The Great Gatsby, its weight a stone, his heart a tangle of fear and hope. Why chase a stranger's dream when his own lies buried? Bayview Street pulses, kids laughing, a dog's bark, the diner's neon flickering like a lighthouse. Ellen's house is a narrow two-story, blue paint flaking, marigolds drooping in pots, a tricycle tipped in the grass. Sophie knocks, her fist a drum, and Walter steps back, the book a shield, his pulse a wave. Ellen Harper opens the door, 58, her apron stained, her brown hair streaked gray, her eyes weary but warm like a fire banked low. "Library, folks?" she asks, wiping her hands, her voice a diner's welcome. When she sees the book, her face shifts shock, then a shadow like a sail catching wind. "That's mine," she says, voice low, almost lost. Sophie steps forward, her cap tilting. "We found your Gatsby, Miss Harper, with a note inside. Can we come in?" Ellen's eyes dart to the street, then back, her lips tight. She nods, stepping aside. "Watch the tricycle," she says. Grandkids leave a mess. Her living room is a patchwork of life, a couch taped at the seams, a coffee table scratched, photos of two kids and a man on a shelf, a TV muttering news. Marigolds wilt in a vase, their scent mingling with coffee and soap, the air heavy with years. Ellen sits in a chair, motions them to the couch, the book in her lap. Sophie opens it, the note clear. Life got heavy. "We are finding books left unfinished," Sophie says, her voice gentle like a hand on a wound. "Your note. It means something. Why did you stop?" Ellen's fingers trace the cover, her eyes on the photos, and she speaks, her voice raw, like a page torn open. "Been at the diner 30 years, she says, her eyes distant. Waitress, cook, anything to keep the lights on. Loved Gatsby in school, his parties, his dream, all that shine. Read it again 10 years back, when the world got dark. Tom, my husband, lost his job at the mill, started drinking, pulled away. Bills stacked, we fought. My kids Jake and Mia grew up, left, barely called. I was alone, working doubles, holding this house together. Wrote that note one night, after a shift, reading about Gatsby's longing, his empty house. Life got too heavy for dreams. Returned the book, thought it was gone. She pauses, her hands still, the TV's hum a faint echo. You kept it, all this time?" Walter's chest aches, Clara's voice rising, her reading Pride and Prejudice in their garden, her dream of their book, stopped by her illness. He hid their story like Ellen hid hers, afraid to face the weight. Sophie leans forward, her curls spilling, her voice alight. "What if we read it together, Miss Harper? Finish it, see what it says now. Maybe dreams are not gone." Ellen's eyes flash, her voice sharp. "Dreams? I am 58, scraping by, girl. What is a book going to do?" Walter speaks, his voice low, a surprise. "I lost Clara, my wife. We had a story we did not finish. Your note. It makes me think we owe them something. To try." Ellen's eyes meet his, warm but searching, like a star through clouds. She nods, slow, a door creaking open. "All right. For me, maybe for them, they meet each evening in the library's reading room, where armchairs sag and a rug fades to gray, the sunlight pooling like honey on the floor. Walter sets a table, his hands trembling, spreading a cloth bright as marigolds, placing the Great Gatsby in the center, its pages a pulse. Sophie brings cookies, oatmeal warm, baked with her mom's laughter, and sits, her energy afire. Ellen arrives, her apron gone, a sweater loose, her steps wary, like a sailor testing land. They sit, the book open, the note life got heavy, a quiet song. Walter reads first, his voice rough but steady. Nick Carraway's words rising like smoke. In my younger and more vulnerable years, he begins, and the room breathes, West Egg's lights flickering near. Ellen reads, her voice low, a diner's rhythm, but it soars when Gatsby spins his dream, his shirt's a cascade of hope. Sophie jumps in, her voice tripping over, orgastic, but bright, asking, why does Gatsby chase Daisy? Is it love or just wanting? They pause, the room warm with cookies and coffee, the harbor's song soft through the windows, and talk dreams, how they lift and crush, how they linger. Ellen speaks, her hands on the book, her voice a thread. I wanted to shine like Daisy, she says, her eyes on the note. But I was dishes, that's silence. Reading this, I see Gatsby's mistake he chased a shadow. I want my light, my kids, my home. Walter nods, his voice soft. Clara believed in dreams. She would say, you are not too late. Sophie grins, her cookie crumbling. You're so not too late. The nights weave, the reading room a stage for Gatsby's blaze and fall. Ellen's voice grows, her Daisy a mix of ache and fire, her stories spilling Jake's soccer dreams, Mia's sketches, Tom's sober mornings, the family she wants back. Sophie pins a diner photo to the wall, its neon a beacon, and Walter shares Clara's love for underlining lines, his voice halting, Ellen's nod kind. Locals join, drawn by Sophie's chatter at the market, her notes at the diner, Mrs. Callahan, knitting steady, Pete, a fisherman, laughing at Gatsby's excess. The room hums cookie crumbs, coffee mugs, pages turning, voices braiding. They wrestle with Gatsby's choices, grieve his end, fall silent when Ellen reads of the green light, her voice a wave, carrying her own .at, the final page Gatsby's dream drowned. Nick's farewell Ellen's eyes glisten, but her shoulders lift, like a sail catching wind. He chased too hard, she says, closing the book, her hands firm. I do not need his dream. I need mine Jake, Mia, Tom, this town. She looks at Walter, Sophie, the locals, their faces warm in the lamplight, and her smile is a spark, kindling a fire. Sophie hugs her, her curls wild, and Walter nods. Clara's whisper in his heart, keep going. Walt, Ellen moves forward, calling Jake and Mia, her voice a rope pulling them home, their kids' laughter echoing. Tom sober, his hand steady in hers. She writes flyers, finish your book at the library, and pins them at the diner, the market, the docks, her hope a light spreading. The reading room opens, locals arriving with books a mystery paused, a memoir half read, each a heart waking. Ellen starts a group for any story, any voice, and Sophie tapes the diner photo beside the table, a star to guide them. Walter feels the library stir, no longer his shadow, but Camden's flame, its shelves alive, its air singing. He walks home, the breeze cold, the stars bright, and opens Clara's manuscript, reading a line, the keeper's light burned, a song through the dark. His fingers hold the page, his heart open, a story ready to turn. The air on Harbor Road cuts sharp, heavy with salt and the faint rot of low tide, as Sophie Carter and Walter Brooks weave past stacks of lobster traps. Late October has stripped Camden's trees bare, their branches clawing at a sky the color of slate, the harbor's waves chopping against docks. Sophie's sneakers scuff the gravel, her knit cap slipping, red curls spilling out, her breath puffing in the cold. Walter trails her, his coat flapping, the weight of Moby Dick pulling at his arms, its hardcover edges biting his palms. Ellen Harper's reading nights still hum in his mind, her laugh, her flyers pinned at the diner, the way she turned the great Gatsby into a bridge for her family. But this book, with its note in blue ink, feels like a deeper dive, a current that might pull them under. Sophie glances back, her eyes bright despite the gray. Think he'll slam the door on us? She asks, half joking, and Walter grunts, his lips twitching. If he does, you are climbing through the window. They are after the next book from the box, the one Sophie found yesterday while sorting through Walter's collection of abandoned stories. She held up Moby Dick, its blue cover scarred, and read the note on page 200, "Keep going." Dad, her voice catching, like she felt the weight of it. The library's index cards pointed to Harold Vance, a 74-year-old fisherman on Harbor Road, and Ellen's friend at the diner confirmed he is still there, but quiet since his son passed. Now they stand at Harold's door, a gray Cape house sagging under years of storms, its shingles curling, its porch a tangle of ropes and traps, a single chair facing the sea like a sentinel. Sophie knocks, her fist loud against the wood, and Walter shifts, the book a shield against his chest, his pulse quick. Ellen's courage, knocking on a stranger's door, feels far away. This house too raw, too heavy with ghosts. The door groans open, and Harold Vance fills the frame, a man built from the sea-white beard bristling like foam, hands knotted from years' wrestling nets, eyes a sharp blue, weathered but piercing. His flannel shirt is patched, his boots crusted with salt, and his voice rumbles, low and guarded. "What do you want?" he asks, squinting into the wind, but his gaze catches Moby Dick in Walter's hands, and his face cracks surprise, then a flicker of pain like a wave exposing rock. "That's my book," he says, voice thick, barely above the harbor's hum. "That's Tommy's writing." Sophie steps closer, her cap tilting, her voice soft but steady. "We are from the library, Mr. Vance. We found your copy with a note inside. Can we come in? Just to talk?" Harold's hand tightens on the door, his eyes searching, then he steps back, nodding. "Mind the ropes," he says. "Porch is no place for tripping. The living room is a cave of wood and memory, smelling of pitch and smoke, the air warm from a wood stove spitting sparks in the corner. Pine walls gleam dark, hung with fishing nets, a brass compass, a faded photo of a schooner under full sail. The mantel is a shrine, pictures of a young man, lean and sunburned, grinning with Harold's eyes, hauling a lobster trap, carving a rope on a dock, laughing under a baseball cap. A couch sags under a quilt stitched with anchor patterns, and Harold points them to it, sinking into a chair that creaks like a ship's hull. He takes Moby Dick from Walter, opens it to page 200, the note blazing in blue ink. "Keep going, Dad." His fingers trace the words, slow, like reading a map to a place he cannot reach, and his eyes glisten, catching the stove's red glow. "This is my boy's hand," he says, voice splintering like ice under a boot. "Tommy." Been gone 10 years, Harold sets a kettle on the stove, the hiss filling the quiet, and pours tea black, bitter, steaming in mugs shaped like buoys, their paint chipped. A tin of saltines sits on a crate between them, the harbor's rhythm seeping through the walls, waves slapping, gulls keening, ropes creaking on docks. He leans back, the book in his lap, and speaks, his voice rough but even, like a man reciting a logbook he has memorized. "Tommy was my only kid, 17 when we lost him. Born for the sea, like me. Started fishing with me at 6 lobster, mackerel, whatever ran. He was fast, hands like mine but smarter, always laughing, throwing out puns that made you wince. What do you call a fish with no eyes?" "Esh." Harold's laugh is brief, a bark, then fades, his eyes on the mantel, the photo of Tommy, wind-blown and grinning, a rope slung over his shoulder like a badge. "We started Moby Dick when he was 16, his idea. Said it was our thing, reading about sailors, about Ahab and that white whale. We took turns, out there on the porch, the sea right in front of us, Tommy's voice all fire when he read Ahab's lines. I grumbled too many chapters on whale bones, but he kept me going. Wrote this note one night, smirking. Keep going, Dad. You cannot ditch Ahab. He stops, his hands gripping the book, knuckles pale. The stoves crackle loud in the silence. The harbor moans, a low wail, like it carries Tommy's voice. Then he was gone, Harold says, voice so low it seems to come from the floor. Summer storm, 10 years back. He took our skiff chasing cod, said he could handle it. Storm came fast waves like cliffs, wind tearing nets. Boat flipped, they found him too late. Caught in the lines, he touches the note. The ink faded but sharp, and his voice breaks, a ship splitting. I could not read after that, could not touch this book, could not hear Ahab without hearing Tommy. Returned it, thought it was gone forever. You kept it all this time? Walter's throat closes, his hands tight on his mug, the tea cold. Clara's memory stabs her in their kitchen, reading Wuthering Heights, her voice a melody he cannot recapture. He stopped their lighthouse story, each word a wound, and Harold's pain mirrors his. A different loss, but the same weight of love you cannot hold, a page you cannot turn. Sophie sits forward, her cap off now, red curls spilling, her voice gentle but sure. What if we finish it, mister? Vance? She says, her eyes steady. For Tommy. Read it together. See what it says now. Ellen, our last reader, found hope in her book. Maybe you can too. Harold shakes his head, his beard brushing his chest, his eyes flint. I am too old, girl, he says, voice hard. What is a book when he is gone? Walter speaks, his voice low, cutting through the stove's hiss. I lost my wife, Clara, he says, his fingers tracing the mug's edge. We had a book we did not finish, a love story. I stopped because it broke me. But Ellen showed me we might owe them the ending, to say we kept going. For them, Harold's eyes meet his, blue and raw, like a sea after a storm, and he nods, slow, deliberate. All right, he says, voice a rumble. For Tommy, they agree to meet each evening in the library's reading room, where Ellen's Gatsby nights left a warmth in the air, a promise of connection. Walter prepares the table, his hands steady now, spreading a cloth the color of deep water, setting Moby Dick in the center, its pages thick with the sea's pull. Sophie brings cookies peanut butter, soft and warm, baked with her mom in a kitchen loud with laughter, and Ellen arrives, her sweater loose, her smile a quiet strength, her presence tying the group to their first victory. Harold walks in, his boots loud on the hardwood, his flannel shirt buttoned to the collar, the book under his arm, his eyes sharp but open, like a man stepping onto a deck he thought he had left. They sit, the book open, the note keep going, Dad a beacon in the lamplight. Walter reads first, his voice rough but clear, the words of Ishmael and the Pequod slicing the quiet. Call me Ishmael, he starts, and the room shifts, the harbor outside echoing the book's vast sea. Harold takes the next page, his voice a deep roll, like thunder over waves, reading Ahab's first stand, his scar glowing, his peg leg thumping, his vow against the white whale of fire. Ellen reads, her laugh soft at the endless pages on whaleskin, her voice weaving light into the story's weight. Does Melville ever stop describing blubber? She asks, and Harold snorts, his first smile small but real. Sophie dives in, her voice tripping over harpoon, but bright, asking, why is Ahab so angry? Is Moby Dick just a whale or something else? They pause, the book open, the harbor's moan seeping through the windows, and talk about Ahab's obsession, how it ate him, how grief can eat you too. Harold stirs his coffee, the mug steaming, and speaks, his voice low, like he is confessing to the sea. Tommy loved Ahab's fight, he says, his eyes on the note. Not the madness, but the guts. He wanted to sail the Atlantic, just him in a boat, to see how far he could go. Said it was not about getting there, but about trying. I lost that when he died. Stopped fishing, stopped talking, just sat in that chair, watching the harbor, waiting to sink. Ellen reaches for a cookie, breaks it, her eyes soft. I was stuck too, Harold, she says. Lost in bills, in fights with Tom, until Gatsby showed me I could try again for my kids, my home. This book might show you something, if you let it. Walter nods, his words slow, heavy. Clara loved stories like this, big, fierce, full of heart. I stopped our book, but reading this, I feel her pushing me, saying, keep going, Walt, maybe Tommy is pushing you. Harold looks at the note, his fingers brushing the ink, and his voice is quiet, almost a prayer. Maybe, he says, and turns the page. The evenings unfold. The reading room a ship riding Moby Dick's waves. Harold's voice grows, his Ahab a storm that shakes the walls, his stories of Tommy spilling like nets cast wide, how he named their skiff Starbuck after the first mate, how he sang shanties off-key, how he carved tiny boats from driftwood, leaving them on the porch for Harold to find. Ellen brings Jake and Mia, her kids, who sit close, Jake asking about whaling gear, Mia sketching the Pequod in her notebook, her pencil a soft scratch. Tom comes one night, his flannel loose, his hand brushing Ellen's, his eyes on Harold as he reads about the crew's oath. More join, drawn by Ellen's flyers, now pinned at the docks, the fish market, the harbor bar misses. Callahan, knitting as she listens, her needles a steady click. Pete, a fisherman, his boots trailing salt, his laugh loud at Queequeg's spear. The room hums coffee mugs, cookie crumbs, pages turning, voices braiding. They wrestle with the book's weight, argue Ahab's madness, puzzle Ishmael's tangents, fall silent when Harold reads about the sea's endless pull, his voice carrying Tommy's spark. One night, Sophie unrolls a map of the Atlantic, its edges curling, and traces Ahab's path, asking Harold about Tommy's dream. He wanted to sail from Camden to Ireland, Harold says, his finger on the map, his voice far away. Said he would send me a postcard from Galway, with a pun about shamrocks. The group quiets, the harbors wail loud, and Ellen touches his arm, her hand steady. He is in this book, she says, and Harold nods, his eyes wet. The note opened beside him. When they reach the end, Ahab's spear, the Pequod's splinter, the sea swallowing all but Ishmael. Harold's voice breaks, tears carving lines down his face, but he reads on steady, like a man steering through a gale. He closes the book, his hands resting on its cover, and looks at the group: Ellen, Sophie, Walter, Jake, Mia, Tom, the locals, their faces soft in the lamplight. Tommy would have loved that fight, he says, his voice thick but clear. Ahab went down swinging, brave to the end. My boy was brave too. He wipes his eyes, his smile small, like a crack letting light through stone. Sophie hugs him, her arms tight, her curls brushing his shoulder. Ellen squeezes his hand, and Walter nods, his throat locked. Clara's nudge a warmth in his chest. The next night, Harold brings a photo of Tommy grinning, salt-crusted, hauling a trap, and tacks it above the reading room table, its frame simple pine. So he is here, he says, his voice firm, and the group murmurs, a soft wave of agreement, their eyes on the boy who loved Ahab. Harold starts sharing Tommy's fishing tricks, his puns, his dream to sail oceans, his habit of whittling boats from driftwood, leaving them like gifts. The group opens up Mrs. Callahan speaks of her husband lost to a stroke, Pete of a cousin drowned off Rockland, Ellen of the years she lost to fear. Walter talks, his voice halting, about Clara, her laugh, her habit of underlining book lines, their lighthouse story left behind. The room becomes a net, catching memories, weaving them into something whole. Harold's voice carries beyond the library. He talks at the docks, his words cutting through the clatter of buckets and gulls. They are finding books at the library, ones you left half read. Found mine about my boy. You got one, go see. His old crewmen with faces like weathered planks come to a reading night. Their boots heavy, their stories heavier, one mentioning a navigation guide he abandoned. Ellen's flyers spread, now joined by Harold's hand notes scrawled on napkins, taped at the bait shop, the harbor bar. More locals arrive, some with books, others to hear Harold's tales of Tommy, of storms, of the sea. He carves a driftwood boat, its sails etched with starbuck, and sets it on the reading table, a small offering. For Tommy, he says, and Sophie's eyes shine, pinning it to her map. The Atlantic a promise kept. The box of unfinished books lightens. Pete's brother brings a sailing log. A nurse finds a half-read novel. But the library grows heavier, its air thick with voices, its shelves alive. Walter feels the tide shift, Ellen's hope now joined by Harold's fire, and thinks of their notes. Life got heavy. Keep going, Dad. How many more wait? He walks home, the harbor black, the wind cold, and opens Clara's manuscript, reading a line. The keeper's light burned, a heart against the dark. He keeps the pages out, his fingers steady, a step closer to turning them. A November fog clings to Camden, draping the streets in a soft gray, muffling the clatter of the harbor and the crunch of leaves underfoot. Sophie Carter weaves through the library's reading room, her sneakers whispering on the hardwood, a stack of books teetering in her arms. The table from their Moby Dick night still stands, its blue cloth rumpled. Harold Vance's driftwood boat perched beside a map of the Atlantic, Tommy's photo gazing down from the wall. Ellen Harper sits nearby, pinning a new flyer to the bulletin board. Join us to finish your book, her handwriting bold, her diner stories pulling more locals each day. Walter Brooks sorts returns at the counter, his cardigan loose, his fingers lingering on a worn spine. Harold's voice from last night echoing in his head. Tommy was brave too. The library hums, not with the quiet it once held, but with a pulse, a rhythm of voices and footsteps, a town waking to its stories. Sophie drops her stack with a thud, startling Walter, and pulls a book from the box of unfinished stories, its cover a faded red, the title sharp, To Kill a Mockingbird. She opens it, a note slipping free, written in black ink on a torn page. Cannot face this truth. Her eyes widen, and she holds it up, her voice cutting through the room's hum. Walter, Ellen, look at this one. Walter steps closer, his boots slow, the note's words like a hook in his chest. Ellen joins them, wiping her hands on her sweater, her brow creasing as she reads aloud. Cannot face this truth. That is heavy. Sophie flips to the checkout card. Margaret Sullivan, borrowed 12 years ago. Address on Pine Hill Road, a street winding past the old high school. Margaret Sullivan, Sophie says, her cap slipping. Do we know her? Ellen nods, her voice low. Peggy Sullivan. Taught English at the high school, retired early, left town after. Something happened. I heard she is back, living alone. Walter's fingers tighten on the book. The weight of Ellen's life got heavy, and Harold's keep going. Dad's still fresh. We should find her, he says, quieter than he means, and Sophie grins, already reaching for her coat. They head to Pine Hill Road that afternoon. The fog thick, curling through pines like smoke, the air sharp with damp earth and needles. Sophie's scarf flaps, her chatter about the high school's fall, play our town. She saw it twice, filling the silence. Walter carries To Kill a Mockingbird, its edges soft under his fingers. His stomach knotted. Harold's stories of Tommy, Ellen's fight for her family. They were hard, but this note feels sharper, like a truth that cuts. Pine Hill Road is quiet, houses spaced wide, their yards littered with fallen branches. Peggy's home is a small cottage, its clapboards pale green, its windows dark, a garden of wilted asters circling a stone path. A mailbox leans, Sullivan painted in peeling letters. Sophie knocks, her fist gentle, and Walter stands back, the book heavy, his breath fogging in the chill. The door opens slowly, and Margaret Peggy Sullivan peers out, a woman of 62, her hair a short silver bob, her eyes gray and wary, like clouds before rain. She wears a wool shawl over a blouse, her hands thin, clutching the door's edge. "Yes?" she asks, her voice crisp, a teacher's tone, but it softens when she sees the book in Walter's hands. "Is that?" "To Kill a Mockingbird." Sophie nods, her smile careful. "We are from the library, Miss Sullivan. We found your book with a note inside. Can we talk?" Peggy's face tightens, her eyes flicking to the street, then back. She hesitates, her fingers twisting the shawl, then steps aside. "Come in," she says, her voice low. "But keep it quick, the cottage is spare, its walls bare except for a framed poem, Emily Dickinson. Hope is the thing with feathers and a shelf of books, their spines cracked but neat. A wood chair sits by a cold hearth, a quilt folded over its back, the air smelling of lavender and dust. Peggy offers no tea, no chairs, standing by the window, her arms crossed, the fog pressing against the glass. Sophie sets the book on a small table, opens to the note, cannot face this truth, and looks at Peggy, her voice soft. "We are finding people who left books unfinished, trying to help them finish. Your note, it feels important. Will you tell us why you stopped?" Peggy's eyes lock on the note, her lips a thin line, and for a moment, Walter thinks she will send them away. But she speaks, her voice low, like a confession in an empty room. "I taught English at Camden High for 25 years, she says, her eyes on the fog, not them. Loved To Kill a Mockingbird, taught it every Fall Scout's courage, Atticus's justice, Boo Radley's kindness. 12 years ago, I was head of the department, respected or so I thought. Then a student, Caleb, a quiet boy, good writer, accused a teacher, Mr. Hayes, history of, touching him, after hours, in the locker room. Caleb came to me, shaking, his journal full of it, begging for help. I believed him, wanted to help, but the principal, the board, they pushed back. Hayes was popular, coached football, had friends in town. They said Caleb was troubled, lying, his family poor, looking for trouble. I fought for him, took it to the superintendent, but they buried it, threatened my job, my pension. Parents turned on me, said I was stirring up lies, ruining a good man. I wrote that note one night, grading papers, reading about Atticus defending Tom Robinson, knowing I was failing Caleb. I could not face the book, could not face myself. I returned it, resigned, left Camden for a decade. Came back last year, thought I could hide. Walter listens, his chest tight, the book heavy in his hands. Clara's face rises her in their garden, reading Pride and Prejudice, her voice fierce when she spoke of fairness. He failed her too, in a way, stopping their story when she died, afraid to face the pages without her. Peggy's shame is different, public, raw, but the weight is the same, a truth too big to hold. Sophie steps closer, her scarf dangling, her voice gentle. What if we read it together, Miss Sullivan? Finish it, see what it says now. Ellen found hope in her book. Harold found his son in his. Maybe this can help you. Peggy's eyes flash, her voice sharp. Help? Caleb's gone, left town. I do not even know where. Hayes is still here, retired, a hero to some. What good is a book? Walter speaks, his voice low, steady. I lost my wife, Clara. We had a story we did not finish. I thought it was too late, but Ellen, Harold, they showed me we can still turn the page, even when it hurts. Maybe you owe Caleb that, to face the truth for him. Peggy's eyes meet his, gray and searching, and she nods, a small crack in her wall. All right, she says, voice barely audible. Let us try. They plan to meet in the library's reading room, where Harold's boat and Tommy's photo keep watch, Ellen's flyers now joined by notes from the docks. Walter sets the table, his hands careful, spreading a cloth the color of autumn leaves, placing To Kill a Mockingbird in the center, its red cover catching the lamplight. Sophie brings brownies, chocolate, fudgy, baked with her mom. The pan's still warm and Ellen arrives, her sweater bright, her voice a quiet pull, tying the group to their shared nights. Harold joins, his boots heavy, his flannel loose, his eyes curious, the weight of Moby Dick still in his hands. Peggy walks in, her shawl tight, her steps hesitant, like a woman crossing a bridge she does not trust. They sit, the book open. The note cannot face this truth, a shadow on the page. Walter reads first, his voice soft but clear, the words of Scout Finch and Maycomb filling the room. When he was nearly 13, my brother Jem got his arm badly broken. He begins, and the air shifts like they are all in Alabama, the dust of a small town under their feet. Peggy reads next, her voice crisp, a teacher's cadence. But it wavers when she reaches Atticus in the courtroom, his calm defense of Tom Robinson, like a mirror. Ellen takes a turn, her voice warm, laughing at Scout's sass, her eyes soft when Boo Radley hides gifts in the tree. Sophie reads, her voice bright, stumbling over nigger but pushing on, asking, why does everyone hate Tom? He did not do anything. They pause, the fog outside thick, the room warm with brownies and coffee, and talk about justice, how it fails, how shame can silence you. Peggy speaks, her hands clasped, her voice low. I saw Caleb and Scout, she says, her eyes on the book. Curious, brave, but small against the world. I wanted to be Atticus, to stand up, but I was not strong enough. The town turned on me, on Caleb, and I ran. Reading this now, it hurts, but it feels like. Owning it, Harold nods, his voice gruff. Tommy loved a fight, like Ahab. You fought for that boy, even if you lost. That is something. Ellen smiles, her hand on Peggy's. You are here now. That is a start. The nights build, the reading room a courtroom of their own. To Kill a Mockingbird's truth, cutting deeper with each page. Peggy's voice strengthens, her readings of Atticus like a vow, her stories of Caleb spilling his poems, his quiet laugh, the way he stopped writing after the scandal. Ellen brings Jake and Mia, who sit close, Mia asking about Boo, Jake frowning at the trial's unfairness. Harold shares a story of Tommy standing up to a bully, his voice proud. Locals join, drawn by Ellen's flyers. Harold's duck talks Mrs. Callahan, her knitting steady Pete, his laugh softer now, a new face, Mrs. Lowell, a retired librarian who taught with Peggy, her eyes wet when she sees her. The room fills brownie crumbs, coffee mugs, pages turning, voices rising. They argue Atticus's choices, mourn Tom's fate, cheer Scout's courage, quiet when Peggy reads about Boo's blanket, her voice breaking, like she sees Caleb in the shadows. One night, Sophie brings a photo of Camden High's old yearbook, found in the library's archives, showing Peggy with her class. Caleb small in the back, smiling. He was here, Sophie says, and Peggy touches the photo, her fingers shaking, her eyes full. He deserved better, she says, and Ellen hugs her, her arms warm. Walter speaks, his voice low. Clara believed in fairness, like Atticus. She would say, "You are doing right by Caleb now." Finishing this, Peggy nods, her shawl slipping, her face open, like a window letting in air when they reach the end. Tom's loss, Boo's gift, Scout's understanding. Peggy cries, her hands covering her face, but her shoulders are light, like she has set something down. "I failed him," she says, voice thick, but Atticus did not give up, even when he lost. "I can try again, for Caleb, for others." She looks at the group: Ellen, Sophie, Walter, Harold, the locals, Jake, Mia, Mrs. Lowell, and her smile is small but steady, like a seed breaking ground. Sophie cheers, her brownie crumbling, and Harold claps, his hands loud, a sailor's applause. Ellen hugs Peggy, and Walter nods, his throat tight, Clara's voice in his ear: "Keep going, Walt." Peggy does not stop there. She visits Camden High the next day, her shawl straight, her steps firm, and meets the new principal, a young woman who listens. Peggy tells Caleb's story, not the scandal, but his courage, his words, and asks to start a reading club, to teach To Kill a Mockingbird again, to talk about truth. The principal agrees, and Peggy returns to the library with a plan. Students will join their nights, bringing their own books, their own truths. She writes a letter to Caleb, not knowing where he is, but keeps it in the book, a promise to try. Ellen pins new flyers at the school. Harold talks to parents at the docks, and the reading room grows: students, teachers, locals, their voices a chorus. Peggy brings a chalkboard from the school, sets it in the room, writes, "What is your truth?" in white dust, and the group answers, their words a map: justice, love, courage, loss. The box of unfinished books shrinks. A student finds a poetry anthology, Mrs. Lowell a half-read Austen, but the library expands, its walls holding more than books, its air thick with stories. Walter feels the pulse strengthen, Ellen's hope, Harold's fire, now Peggy's truth, and thinks of their notes. Life got heavy. "Keep going, Dad. Cannot face this truth. How many more wait?" He walks home, the fog lifting, the stars faint, and opens Clara's manuscript, reading a line. The painter's brush danced, a light on the sea. His hands are steady, the pages open, a truth he is starting to face. The Camden Public Library glows under a December moon, its windows casting rectangles of gold across the snow-dusted lawn. Inside, the reading room buzzes, not with the quiet of old, but with a living hum. Students from Camden High sprawl across chairs, their backpacks open, Peggy Sullivan's chalkboard scrawled with "What is your truth?" in looping white. Harold Vance leans against a shelf, his flannel loose, telling a dockhand about Tommy's driftwood boats, his voice a low rumble. Ellen Harper passes out cookies, gingerbread, sharp with molasses, baked for the group. Her flyers now a wall of color at the diner, the docks, the school. Sophie Carter darts between tables, her red curls bouncing, helping a teenager find a poetry book, her laughter bright as the tinsel looped around the room's beams. Walter Brooks sits at the center table, his cardigan fraying, sorting a stack of returns, his eyes lingering on the box of unfinished books, now half empty, its stories finding their way home. Peggy's reading club has brought new faces: kids, parents, teachers joining the harbor's fishermen and Ellen's diner crowd. The library a hearth where Camden's heart beats. Sophie slips behind the counter, her sneakers squeaking, and pulls the box from its shelf, her fingers brushing the last few books. She lifts a slim paperback, its cover a deep purple. Their eyes were watching God by Zora Neale Hurston, a note tucked inside, written in green ink. "I am still searching." She gasps, soft but sharp, and waves Walter over, her cap slipping. "This one feels big," she says, her voice low, passing him the book. Walter opens it, the note's words a pull in his chest, like a hand reaching through time. Ellen joins them, her cookie tray clattering, her eyes narrowing as she reads the note aloud. Still searching, she murmurs. That is a life right there. Sophie checks the checkout card. Ruth Coleman, borrowed 15 years ago. Address on Meadow Lane, a road curling past fields beyond town. Ruth Coleman, Ellen says, her voice thoughtful. She was a nurse, left Camden years back after a divorce. Heard she returned last spring. Keeps to herself. Walter's fingers tighten on the book. Peggy's cannot face this truth. Harold's keep going, Dad. Ellen's life got heavy echoing in his mind. We need to find her, he says, his voice steadier than he feels, and Sophie nods, her eyes bright. Already grabbing her scarf, they walk to Meadow Lane the next morning, the air crisp, the fields along the road brittle with frost, their edges glowing under a low sun. Sophie's boots crunch on gravel, her chatter about the library's holiday party. We need more tinsel. Cutting the quiet. Walter carries their eyes. We're watching God. Its weight light but sure, his heart a mix of hope and fear. Ruth's note feels like his own, a search he has paused. Clara's manuscript still open on his table, its pages a question he cannot yet answer. Meadow Lane stretches wide, houses few and far, their chimneys puffing smoke into a sky clear as glass. Ruth's home is a low ranch, its siding a faded yellow, its roof sagging, a field of tall grass swaying behind it, a wooden bench under a bare oak. A mailbox stands straight, Coleman carved in neat letters. Sophie knocks, her fist firm, and Walter shifts, the book in his hands, his breath a faint cloud in the cold. The door opens, and Ruth Coleman stands there, a woman of 68, her hair a braid of gray and black, her eyes brown and warm, but guarded, like a door half closed. She wears a quilted vest over a flannel shirt, her hands rough from work, a smudge of dirt on her cheek. Library, folks? She asks, her voice low, a nurse's calm, but it softens when she sees the book. That's mine. Their eyes were watching God. Sophie smiles, her scarf slipping. We found it, Miss Coleman, with a note inside. Can we come in? Just to talk? Ruth's eyes flick to the field, then back, her lips a thin line. She nods, stepping aside. Wipe your boots, she says. Floor's clean, the house is warm. Its walls painted a soft cream, hung with photos of mountains, rivers, a desert at dusk, no people, just places. A bookshelf sags with novels, travel guides, a worn journal, the air smelling of cedar and bread, a loaf cooling on the counter. Ruth motions to a table, its wood scarred, and sits, her hands folded, the book between them. Sophie opens it, the note clear in green ink. I am still searching. We are finding people who left books unfinished, Sophie says, her voice gentle. Your note. It sounds like a journey. Why did you stop? Ruth's eyes lock on the note, her fingers tracing the table's grain, and she speaks, her voice steady but distant, like a story told to the wind. I was a nurse at Camden General for 30 years, she says, her eyes on the photos, not them. Married young to Daniel, a carpenter. Thought we were forever, but we drifted different dreams, different roads. Divorced at 40, no kids, just me and a house too big. I read their eyes were watching God in a book club, loved Janie's spirit, her search for herself, through love, through loss. It was like reading my own heart. But 15 years ago, I was lost. Daniel remarried. My friends moved on. My work felt like a treadmill. I wrote that note one night, alone, after a shift, realizing I did not know who I was without him, without my old life. I left the book, left Camden, traveled New Mexico, Oregon, Maine's backroads searching for something, myself, I guess. Came back last year, Bought this place. Thought I was done running. But I am still searching. Walter listens. His throat tight, Clara's manuscript flashing her handwriting. Their lighthouse story, a search he stopped when she died. Ruth's journey is different outward, physical, but the ache is the same. A question unanswered, a self unclaimed. Sophie leans forward, her scarf pooling, her voice soft. What if we read it together, Miss Coleman? Finish it, see where Janie takes you. Peggy found truth in her book. Harold found his son, Ellen her hope. Maybe this is your map. Ruth's eyes narrow, her voice sharp. A book cannot fix a life, girl. I have been to 20 states, still looking. What is left? Walter speaks, his voice low, clear. I lost my wife, Clara. We had a story we did not finish, a lighthouse tale. I thought I could not go on without her, but Ellen, Harold, Peggy, they showed me we can still search, even when it hurts. Maybe you owe yourself that, to find what you are looking for. Ruth's eyes meet his, brown and searching, and she nods, slow, like a gate creaking open. All right, she says. Let us see. They meet each evening in the reading room, where Peggy's chalkboard, Harold's boat, and Tommy's photo hold court. Ellen's flyers now joined by student posters, Harold's duck notes. Walter sets the table, his hands sure, spreading a cloth like a moonlit field, placing their eyes where watching God in the center, its purple cover glowing. Sophie brings scones cranberry, crumbly, baked with her mom, the kitchen still smelling of butter, and Ellen arrives, her sweater festive, her voice a warm thread, weaving the group. Harold joins, his boots soft, his eyes kind, his Moby Dick strength a quiet anchor. Peggy comes, her shawl loose, her teacher's gaze sharp, her reading club kids trailing teens with notebooks, eyes wide. Ruth walks in, her braid tight, her step steady, a journal tucked under her arm like a shield. They sit, the book open, the note I am still searching a star in the lamplight. Walter reads first, his voice warm, the words of Janie Crawford and Eatonville rising like a song. Ships at a distance have every man's wish on board. He begins, and the room breathes. The snow outside falling soft. Ruth reads next, her voice low, a nurse's calm, but it lifts when Janie runs with tea cake, her search for love afire. Ellen takes a turn, her laugh bright at Janie's wit, her eyes soft when Janie faces loss. Sophie reads, her voice stumbling over dialect but fierce, asking, why does Janie keep going, even when it hurts? They pause, the room warm with scones and coffee, the moon's light slanting through windows, and talk about love, how it shapes you, how searching can break and build you. Ruth speaks, her hands on her journal, her voice clear. Janie was me, she says, her eyes on the book, looking for herself through men, through pain. I ran across states, thinking I would find me in a canyon, a forest. But I am still her, still searching. This book makes me want to stop running, to look inside. Peggy nods, her voice firm. You faced truth like I did. That is a start, Harold grunts, his smile small. Tommy searched too for the sea. You are brave, like him, the nights weave. The reading room a road for Janie's journey. Their eyes were watching God's voice, a guide through Ruth's heart. Ruth's readings grow, her voice a melody, her stories of travel spilling New Mexico's red cliffs, Oregon's rain, a Maine beach at dawn, each a step in her search. Ellen brings Jake and Mia, who listen, Mia sketching Janie's pear tree, Jake asking about tea cake's gamble. Peggy's students share poems, essays, their own searches while Harold tells of Tommy's Atlantic dream, his voice a tide. Locals join, drawn by Ellen's flyers, Harold's dock tales, Peggy's school buzz misses. Callahan, her knitting slow Pete, his laugh warm, Mrs. Lowell, her eyes kind. A new face, Mr. Tate, a farmer who knew Ruth's ex, his nod quiet. The room swells scone crumbs, coffee mugs, pages turning, voices a chorus. They cheer Janie's strength, mourn her losses, quiet when Ruth reads about the horizon, her voice breaking, like she sees her own. One night, Sophie brings a map, not of seas, but of Ruth's travels, pins for Taos, Portland, Bar Harbor spread on the table, a life in lines. You went so far, Sophie says, and Ruth touches a pin, her eyes wet. But not far enough, she says, and Ellen hugs her, her arms steady. Walter speaks, his voice low. Clara searched too, in stories in our book. She would say you're close, Ruth, closer than you think. Ruth nods, her journal open, her pen moving, like she is writing her way home. When they reach the end, Janie's return, her peace, her horizon claimed. Ruth's eyes shine, her hands steady, her voice clear as she reads the final lines. She closes the book, looks at the group: Ellen, Sophie, Walter, Harold, Peggy, the kids, the locals, their faces warm in the moon's glow. Janie found herself, she says, her voice thick but strong. Not in a man, not in a place, but in her own heart. I think I can too, Sophie cheers, her scone crumbling, and Harold claps, his hands a drum. Ellen squeezes Ruth's shoulder, Peggy smiles, her chalkboard a witness, and Walter nods, his throat locked, Clara's manuscript afire in his chest. Ruth takes a step beyond. She starts a journal club at the library, inviting locals to write their searches, dreams, losses, hopes. Her own pages filled with New Mexico's dust, Maine's salt, Camden's snow. She visits the field behind her house, plants wildflowers, a promise to root herself, to stop running. Ellen's flyers grow, now with Ruth's handwriting, pinned at the market, the post office, the farm stand. Harold brings his crew, Peggy her students, and the library becomes a map: stories, journals, books, faces, all paths converging. Ruth writes a letter to her younger self, tucks it in. Their eyes were watching God, and leaves it on the reading room shelf. A gift for the next searcher. The box of unfinished books is nearly empty, a last novel, a guide, a diary, but the library is full. Its walls singing with voices, its shelves heavy with life. Walter feels the tide complete. Ellen's hope, Harold's fire, Peggy's truth, Ruth's search, now his own. He brings Clara's manuscript to the reading room one night. The group gathered: Ellen, Sophie, Harold, Peggy, Ruth, the kids, the locals, their eyes on him. He reads, his voice shaky but clear, the lighthouse keeper and the painter, their love a beacon in the fog. He reaches the last page they wrote, his hand trembling, and keeps going, writing a line. The lighthouse stood, its light a promise kept. The group claps, soft but fierce, and Sophie hugs him, her curls a tangle. Ellen smiles, Harold nods, Peggy writes on her chalkboard. Ruth sets a wildflower on the table, and Walter feels Clara not gone, but here, in the story, in the library, in him. The library breathes, Camden's heart, its doors open, its stories alive. Walter walks home, the snow falling, the moon bright, the manuscript in his hands, finished, a search complete. And so, dear friends, here is where we pause, at the edge of Camden's winter night, the library's lamplight spilling soft across Elm Street, a glow that holds the weight of stories found and finished. The reading room lies still now, its chairs empty, but the air hums with echoes. Ellen's laughter as she pinned her flyers, Harold's voice rolling like the sea, Peggy's chalkboard daring truth, Ruth's journal whispering of roads unwalked. Walter Brooks stands alone by the center table, his fingers brushing Clara's manuscript, its pages complete. A lighthouse keeper and a painter bound in ink, their love a flame that does not fade. Sophie's tinsel glints above, Harold's driftwood boat rests quiet, Tommy's photo keeps watch, Ruth's wildflower lies pressed, and Peggy's words linger, a question unanswered yet whole. The box of unfinished books is empty. Its notes life got heavy. Keep going, Dad. Cannot face this truth. I am still searching, no longer tucked away, but alive, woven into Camden's breath. This is their tale, a library that was once a refuge for one man's grief, now a hearth for a town's heart. Ellen did not reclaim her old life, but found a new one, her family close, her diner a chorus of neighbors sharing half-read pages. Harold did not bring Tommy back, but heard his son's voice in Ahab's fire, his stories lighting the docks, his carved boats a bridge for fishermen to cross. Peggy did not undo Caleb's pain, but faced her shame, her classroom reborn, her students' words a spark for justice. Ruth did not find all her answers, but stopped running, her wildflowers rooting deep, her journal a map for others to follow. Walter did not erase Clara's loss, but wrote their ending, his heart open, the library his home, not his hiding place. They did not conquer time or sorrow, but they turned the pages, each one a step, each note a song, each story a flame that warmed the dark. The library stands, its doors wide, its shelves heavy with more than books, with voices, with hands joined, with lives that met in the quiet of a page. Camden walks through those doors now, not just to read, but to listen, to share, to mend. A fisherman tells of a storm, a student reads a poem, a nurse writes of a patient lost, their stories braiding into one. Ellen's festival waits for spring, Harold's tales fill the night, Peggy's club grows, Ruth's flowers bloom, and Walter watches, his manuscript a gift to the table, a light for the next reader. The library is a road, not a destination, its path winding through Camden's hills, its lanterns lit by those who dare to turn the page, and you, sitting there, with your own heart's quiet, what book lies unfinished on your shelf? A dream you set aside, a love you let fade, a truth you turned from, a search you paused. What might stir if you lifted its cover, if you read one line, if you let its whisper call you back? The library waits, not just in Camden, but in you, a flame that does not demand, but invites, no matter how late the hour, no matter how heavy the weight. Tend to it, dear friend, that small light, that faint song. Let it burn, let it lead you home. Thank you for walking this road with us. Until the next page turns, keep your story close, and do not fear its voice, however soft, however far it feels.